Hello and welcome to episode 6 of the Victorian Studio Podcast. My name is Maureen and I'm coming to you from Winnipeg, Manitoba, Canada. Today is Monday, July the 6th, 2015. I want to thank all returning viewers to my podcast and welcome all new viewers. I also want to thank all the people that have gotten in touch with me over the last few weeks. I've received many messages either via personal message on Ravelry or comments on the forums or by email or YouTube comments, and they've all been so very kind, and I really do appreciate them all. Thank you very much for taking the time to comment and giving me some feedback. So I wanted to share with you today some of my knitting that I've completed or worked on in the last week, as well as some spinning. I'll also share some historical projects that I've done over the last year, so I hope you enjoy seeing those. Now, this past week I've been working on my mitts primarily, and I finished a pair of mitts. Unfortunately, they're not a matching pair. They're one mitt of each of the projects that I have been working on. So we'll just dive in with that first. So the first project that I wanted to share is living in my little Geeky sheet bag. It's the Erin Delight mitts, and these are the cabled mitts that I've been working on for a little while now, and I've been using this Patton's Classic Wool, and it's the worsted, and that is in the Jade Heather colorway. So far I've got one mitt completed, and I'm working on the second one, but at least this first one is done. Now, because it's got a lot of cable work, both on the back of the hand and on the palm, that's all cable work, it's a little too intense for me to be able to work at just, say, watching a movie or TV. So I've been primarily working on this when I've been sitting in my studio watching podcasts. And it has a 12-row repeat, so I use long post-it notes to mark where I am on the chart. So I'm very happy with the way it's turned out and with the size. So there it is on me. So I'm very pleased, like I say, and I'm very pleased with the way the thumb turned out as well. I used the cast-off method of making the thumb hole, not the afterthought method. I really like casting off onto a stitch holder the stitches and then picking up again. And then when I was ready to do the thumb, picked up all of those stitches and then just knit the thumb. So I really like the way that turned out. The only change I made to the pattern is near the top at the finger decreases. What I did was I just did the last couple of rows as straight knit stitch rather than continuing the pattern right up. There's knit stitch on the sides, so I thought that the top knit stitch would also be kind of nice to finish it off. And to be honest, the reason why I did it was in the pattern, the way it's written, it was very hard to follow exactly where to pick up the pattern of the cable, since there are a bunch of different cable front and cable back. I didn't want to screw that up, so I decided I would just stop at a certain row, and then when I was doing the decreases, just do the straight knit stitch. I did do a Kitchener stitch at the top, and I'm very pleased with the way that turned out. It's just the second or third time I've done a Kitchener stitch, so each time it seems to get better and go much smoother. And I learned how to do that from a YouTube video that I will link in my show notes. That's excellent, and she shows it very very well, lots of repeats. And what's nice about the video is obviously you can either rewind or pause it, and then I just knit along with her. So because it's a kind of complex thing to learn, you know, when you're just a beginner like me. So like I say, I'm very pleased with how that's turning out, and so far on the second one I've got the cuff done, so I'll be working on that again this week. So like I say, that's my first pair of mittens that I've been working on. The other pair is in my Silver Shed sheep bag and sheepdog bag from Anne Brodie, and these are the Night Owl mittens by Jorad Lindvik. And if you've been watching a while, I did my first mitt with a single strand of the Ultra Alpaca Fine yarn, and this is Peruvian wool, 50% Peruvian wool, 30% nylon, and 20% superfine alpaca. So just love the feel of this. But because it is a very lightweight wool, the mitt, I can get it on, but it's quite tight. So this was my first attempt at this pattern. And so then I decided to try making it larger by holding the yarn double, and instead of using a US 1.5 needle, I would go up to a US 2. And so I finished the second, it's actually the first of a proper fitting mitt for my size of hand. So like I say, this fits me so much better. So I really love this this pattern. It's so great, and this double strand knitting is so much fun to do. And the 4 rows in the cuff fits a lot better than the 3 that the instructions told me to do. So I mean, I'm just amazed at the size difference. That's just the difference between a single strand or a double strand, US 1.5 needles and US 2. So the size difference is very pronounced. So like I say, got the first one of my good pair done, and again I did a Kitchener stitch at the top, and I picked up the thumb stitches the same way as I did my Aran mitts, so I'm very pleased on how that turned out. So overall, I just love this pattern, and I can't wait to get the second one done of the pair. And then I'll have to decide what I'm going to do with the smaller one, if I'm going to make a mate for it or use it for something else or what. So, but really love those. So the second one of the larger pair, so far have my cuff done, so on to the color work for that. So working on mitts this week has been rather funny because we've had a very hot week of weather. We've had 30-degree temperatures with lots of thunderstorm and lightning and all of that, and here today it's nice and cool. It was only 13 degrees today, and it's only going up, I think, to 17, so much more tolerable, because I'm, like I've said before, I'm a fall and winter girl. I don't like the heat and the high humidity. Oh, it was a pain, so it was very weird working on mitts when it was so hot out last week. But it was also nice, though, to have a project that wasn't large, that was heating me up while I was working on it. So mitts, socks, those kind of small things are nice to do when it is warm out, because it's not like a blanket sitting on your lap while you're working on it. So that worked out well. So because I was concentrating on getting those mitts, at least one done of each pair to show you, I didn't get any work done on my Hermione's Everyday Socks. So hopefully that will be a project that I'll be concentrating more on this week. So what else I thought I would share with you is a couple of historical projects. I started knitting back last February of 2014. So I've got about a year's worth of projects that I will be sharing every once in a while. And today I thought I would share two scarves that I've done. The first one is called the Wee Bit Cowl, and this was done back last May of 2014. And this was a free pattern, and I chose it because when daughter and I were taking our knitting classes at Wolseley Wool, when you were in class you got a discount but on anything you bought. But I also found some really neat, really super thick yarn for sale, 50% off. So I thought it'd be fun to try to use that for something. And this was Cascade Yarns Magnum Paints, a really super bulky yarn, but I found two, and one was in blues and one in brown tones. So I gave daughter the blue one, and I did the brown, or I kept the brown one. So I thought I'd show you what I made with that. This is, like I say, called the Wee Bit Cowl. And it didn't take very long to make, obviously, because it was only, let's see, a little over 100 meters of yarn, and I used US 15 needles for this. But what I loved about it is the way that the pattern pooled the yarn. This is obviously going to be a really nice thick scarf or cowl to wear on our cold winters. But it was my first attempt at doing SSKs and purl two together through the back loop, and I had to actually look on YouTube to learn how to do those stitches, because it was, like I say, just a few months into my knitting career, so it was something that I hadn't done before. So I really love the way that this yarn pooled for this pattern, and the way the leaf patterns showed up for that. And before I blocked this was 55 inches long, and after blocking it grew to 64 inches long. So it's going to be great just to wrap around in our cold winters. So, and for blocking, what I did was I went to Home Depot and bought some of those squishy mats that you can buy for, say, your garage floor. They're like the puzzle pieces. They're like the mats that people have bought that are the children's play mats. You know, they come in bright colors, and you can get them in like blues and reds and bright yellows. But what I had heard on the forums of some of the people using those is when they put something light that was wet, that sometimes they would get some of the color transferred to their items. So what I did was I got my blocking mats just in the regular gray color and some blocking pins, and it's wonderful for blocking out all my projects. So I mean, it was a lot cheaper than also buying an official blocking set. And even though those mats are thinner than some of the knitting blocking sets that you can get, some of them I think they're about an inch or more thick for the blocking pins to go in. These other mats, they came in a set of 4 for I think it was $12 Canadian, and you can double them up. So that's what I do is if I can, I'll double them up, double thickness, and that way the pins don't go all the way through. So and because I have a waterbed, there's no way that I can block on my bed. That would not be a good idea. usually what I do is I'll block it, say, out on my dining room table using those mats, and then I can just pick up the whole thing and I'll transfer it to another room so that it can dry and be out of the way and out of the cat's way, because they seem to be attracted, especially Tawny, to anything blocking. She has to be right there and right in the middle of the action when I get my knitting, especially wet. I guess maybe it's the sheepy smell that she loves, but I thought I would mention that. So that's how I block my items. The other historical project I wanted to share with you today is a paid pattern, and I made this in just this past January of 2015, and it's called the Fisherman's Wife, pardon me, the Fisherman's Wife Cowl. And what I love about this is cables. Again, I just love the design on this. Now, I decided to do this pattern because I had purchased quite a bit of the Lion brand Thick and Quick yarn when I first started knitting. And I love using it for blankets and that kind of thing. I mean, I've made a few even cat beds, you know, blankets for them out of it. It's cheap, it's, you know, easy to work with, and easy to clean. But I had quite a few different colorways, so I was looking for ways to kind of use up my stash. And so when I found this pattern that used this bulky yarn, I thought this Sequoia colorway would look really nice in a scarf. So this pattern is supposed to be shorter. I made it longer. I just wanted to use up the whole skein, so I did. I made it longer, but I also added, the pattern does call for buttons. The buttons, though, on the pattern go right up close to your neck. This I can like wrap around twice and then buttons. So I found some wooden buttons online on an Etsy store, and I will speak more about that in a minute. And then on the other end, I did the picot edge. And this was the first time that I've done a picot edge. Let's see if I can show this to you. So that was a lot of fun to learn how to do. And of course there's buttonholes that I learned how to do as well for the first time. So that was a great way to use up some of that yarn. But like I say, when I was knitting it up, I really wanted something in a wooden button to add to it. And it was really hard to find wooden buttons anywhere around here. I couldn't find that at Michael's or Walmart or any of the department stores around here. I don't think I even found any at our local Fabricland, which is like a Joann's in the States. It's just fabric though, here in Canada. So what I ended up finding was a store on Etsy. I just Googled, I think, wooden buttons, and I found a shop that was actually Canadian in Montreal, and it's called Yuki Designs, and I will link to it in my show notes. And it's a great Etsy shop. The buttons were super affordable and such neat designs, and they say they specialize in rustic ethnic craft supplies. So I bought half a dozen of these wooden flower buttons. You can see that a little better. And I also at the same time got some metal buttons, and I'll share those with you. I have them in my little teacup with, of course, cabled cup cozy. So like I say, I got these wooden buttons. And I also got two types of metal buttons. And these were like repurposed metal. So I can't remember exactly where they said the metal was from, but it's very, very rustic and you know, not fancy or girly, and I think it'll look really nice on some future projects. And the other metal ones I got were actually old copper tarnished buttons. I just love these. I thought the green patina on them will really look great on some other projects. And so I got, I believe, half a dozen of each of these styles. So there's that green again. I hope you can see that. So yeah, I just love that Etsy shop. Like I say, so reasonable. Of course, being in Canada, I didn't have to worry about, you know, customs or anything like that. I mean, it was so cheap anyway, but the shipping was very reasonable. So I'd highly recommend Yuki Designs on Etsy. The other thing that I wanted to share with you this week is some spinning. And if you were watching my previous episode, I mentioned that this Saturday was the beginning of an event on Ravelry called the Tour de Fleece. Now, if that sounds familiar for non-knitting or non-spinning people, it is run in conjunction with the Tour de France. So this year it's running from July the 4th to 26th with 2 rest days during that time, just like the real tour. The term Tour de Fleece was first coined by a blog in 2006 in an event to get spinners together to kind of cheer each other on and set their own goals for some larger spinning projects. In 2008, Ravelry picked up that event, and with the millions of users on Ravelry, many spinners would break off into teams. So for the past quite a few years, there's been some large and small teams all participating in the Tour de Fleece. And this year I thought I would participate for the first time, and I joined Sarah from Kentucky, and you know, she's the lady that has the sheep farm that got me involved in knitting by introducing me to Ravelry and the Ravel Linux last February. And she's a very sweet lady who also creates ravatars, and those are avatars that we use on Ravelry. She created a ravatar for each of the participants in her group, and I'll just insert the ravatar she created for me. And we all have the same image, but all different colors on the outside. So she put red on the outside of mine because I think I'm the only Canadian on the group. So besides that team, I also signed up to be on Team Canada, of course. And then when I posted a photo on the Team Canada forum of my cat Sheba, I was invited to a cat group called Team Catitude to participate on their team as well. So of course I accepted. So I'm on 3 different teams for this Tour de Fleece, and I'll insert the picture of Sheba here. It seems like whenever I pick up my spin, I have at least 1, 2, or 3 cats who are closely monitoring my progress. And Sheba that day was right up on my lap. I happened to be wearing a Canada t-shirt that day. Didn't really realize it until I looked at the photo later, and caught her just at a great moment that looked like she was really cheering me on for Go Canada Go. So, like I say, when I posted that picture to Ravelry, I got a lot of wonderful feedback for that. That was a lot of fun. So what I decided as my goal for the Tour de Fleece was to try to spin both of my fiber bundles that I got from Woolsey Wool a few weeks back, so that I could create something to participate in another knit along. And that was the Pen Hook and Needles Cardiac or Go Red knit along, crochet along by Talia and Marlisha on that forum group. So I wanted something in red, so when I found this Malabrigo fiber, I knew that I just had to try spinning it up. And what really attracted me to this fiber in the Cerise colorway was the different tones of reds to almost a black and lighter reds that would go great for their knit along, but it also reminded me of the logo that I created for the Cardiac Sciences program that I mentioned in previous episodes. But if you didn't see that then, I'll insert a picture of it here. That's a logo that I painted. Actually, it's my thumbprint that I created for use in our program. First for the website, but now it's being used program-wide on our letterhead and decorations in the office and on our posters and papers and that kind of thing. So I wanted to create a yarn because it's a cardiac knit along. I wanted to create a yarn that looked like the logo that I painted for our program. So I started out with 2 of these I guess skeins of fiber, and it's 100% pure merino, and it's 4 ounces. So I have 8 ounces, and it's a Uruguay yarn or fiber. So I have the one there. I've also pre-drafted the other skein of fiber so that it makes it easier to spin. So pre-drafting is just pulling it out and making it a little bit looser and easier to spin. But what I also wanted to do was add some white to that yarn because there's white in the logo. And so when we found this soy silk fiber at the Blue Hills Fiber Festival a few weeks ago when Daughter and I were there, I thought this would be great to mix in with the Malabrigo merino, and it's been working out beautifully. This beautiful silk has really been a wonderful addition to the spun yarn. So far this is only about a day's worth of spinning. I've been using my new Turkish spindle, and just every once in a while just been inserting a little bit of that white silk, and so far it's coming along quite well, so I'm really pleased with that. I did a fair amount on Saturday, but I didn't get much done on Sunday because we had a family barbecue, and so I have to get back to that later today. So it's been great just getting a start on that. So hopefully I can meet my goal of getting both of those bats of fiber spun up. Right now it's a fairly thick single. I'll 2-ply this to probably make a worsted yarn, and I won't be able to decide what I'm going to actually make out of this until I determine how much yarn I get at the end, and that then will determine what pattern I choose. But it probably will be something that is like a worsted weight pattern because I'm not spinning this really, really thin. So that's my goal for the Tour de Fleece, is to get both of those spun up. But for the knitting, the cowl that I'm going to eventually use the yarn for, I have until September 30th to finish that project. So it also started in July 1st, and that was with Talia and Marlisha at the Pen Hook and Needles podcast. They're running this cowl because Talia is a nurse, and so she has a vested interest in the cardiac sciences as well. And they've been running that for a few years, I believe, but this is my first year participating in that cowl. So I have until July 26th to spin it up, and then until September 30th to actually knit something out of the resultant yarn. So I will let you know how I do, give you my progress as I go. So hopefully I can meet those goals. So it's great to participate in these things. That's the great thing about Ravelry, is it gives you, I think, it gives me at least a little bit more incentive to get some projects done and keep going, and to see what other people are doing, learn so much from others, from what they're doing. During the Tour de Fleece, of course, everybody that has a wheel has been showing their progress, and they can get a skein done in a day on some of these wheels that are just beautiful. And maybe one day I'll get a wheel, but for now I'll plug along with the Turkish spindle and see how I do. My daughter and I both took spindling classes last fall, and since then I just thought I would share with you how far I've come. By no means am I perfect with my my spinning yet. I'm a far way off. I still get very thick and thin yarns, but thought I would share with you some of the, the progress that I've done. And like they say, practice makes perfect. So this was the first yarn that I ever made, and this was the sample of Greenworks Fiber Mill, I think it was called, yarn in the American Diner colorway. This was the yarn that I made during our classes last fall. So I love the color, but it's very thick and thin. But for a first attempt, I was really thrilled. I actually made yarn. And for anybody who's actually done this, they'll realize the kick that you get out of doing that. And so during those classes, they gave us some sample fibers in different from different breeds, so you could kind of see, what you liked, and different staple lengths, how long each fiber was, if it was a short staple or a long staple. It was a great way to learn that. So, I've done a few other really small skeins to practice with those small bits of fiber. So as I've come along, I've, gotten more and more practice. I would do some fiber for my toys, for the bears that I've shown, or the lion, and the tiger, and that kind of thing. So I've done a lot of that kind of spinning. Tried 2 colors, barber poling, learning all about that, learning about how to ply. And I've only ever tried 2-plying so far. So, I still have to learn things like chain or Navajo plying, 3-plying. It's all kinds of things to learn. But I made myself my own nitty naughty to wind the yarn around and to measure it off, and how to, then soak it and thwack it, and then, put it into my very own skeins. So over the last year, almost a year, I've been slowly progressing with what I've been attempting. I have a bunch of spun yarn or spun fiber into yarn in this basket that I keep, and I think it's great to keep as a reminder of how far you come, some of your first attempts, and it's kind of neat to see how far you've come in a short while. So I keep that in my yarn cubby as well. So I'm looking forward to getting more done, and as I get my Turkish spindle filled, I'll take that off and make as much as I can, and then attempt a 2-ply. So we'll see how that goes. So as usual, over the past week, I've also been keeping up with some of my favorite podcasts, and one of them that I never want to miss is James at Dancing Geek. And he had an interesting topic that he brought up in his last episode, and it was about signing and making videos more accessible to the hard of hearing. Now, this kind of struck a chord with me, and I told him that I would be responding in my episode because a few years ago, when I was doing more card making, I met someone online, a woman who just lives in the north end of my same city. And we both love to do the same kind of cards and designs, and we got to talking online, and we thought, oh, wouldn't it be fun to get together and maybe do some card making together. So we would have, some days she would come to my studio, and some days I would go to her home, and we developed a friendship over that. And we both actually worked at the same hospital together for a while before I moved to another hospital. And so, small world. So it was a lot of fun to get together. But she wasn't born deaf, but she did develop into she does have hard of hearing disability, and so I was concerned because I didn't know how to sign. I don't know how to do sign language, and I could learn, but she was very comfortable in reading lips, and we were able to communicate wonderfully. Always, of course, face to face, reading lips. I would also, when we would get together, have my iPad with me, and I had a program on it that had a whiteboard type of app that I could just write with my finger. And so if there's something that maybe she didn't quite pick up, that I could write it out for her. And so we communicated that way, and we communicated just wonderfully. And I really had a good time with my visits with her. But when I started watching podcasts, something that she told me once struck a chord, and it was something that I tried to remember when I set up my podcast. If you notice, I sit to the side in the frame of my podcast, and I did that on purpose because of something that she told me. When we were doing card making, I would mention that there were some things on YouTube that I would watch to learn. And of course, she had a very good point that when it was something, if it was something that somebody was on screen and speaking, she could read their lips. But if it was a tutorial type of recording, like some of the videos that I've done previously where I'm not on screen but you just see my hands and I'm showing you what I've made, obviously those weren't beneficial to her at all unless there was closed captioning. And as James mentioned, and he's too right, closed captioning on YouTube is atrocious. I mean, I guess it's hard, especially with different accents and that kind of thing. Which reminds me of one day I accidentally had my closed captioning turned on for one of my own podcasts because as I've mentioned before, I have cats, and one of them happened to walk across my laptop while I was working on one of my podcasts, and she accidentally turned on the closed captioning. And so I thought it was funny to see how YouTube was interpreting what I was saying. It was picking up quite a bit, actually more than I expected, but there was some funny instances of how it was interpreting some of the words that I was saying, especially names, places and people and that kind of thing. It was pretty funny. If you want to get kind of a laugh, turn on closed captioning. Not on mine though. Turn on closed captioning on something, and you'll see how it works or not, or it doesn't work. So getting back to my friend, she said, if it was a tutorial that somebody was speaking into the camera, she could follow along on those kind of things. But of course, if it was something that you just see somebody's hands or what they're working on, it was basically useless to her unless the closed captioning was well done. So I was going to say to James, he was talking about how because his podcasts are so long that it would be nigh impossible to write out all his own captioning. And I agree. I think that would be crazy. It would take probably all week just to transcribe and write all of that out. But what I was going to say is if maybe in the future podcasters could remember two things. Maybe if they're showing something that's on the screen, maybe that would be a great time to do a closed captioning. If it's a picture of them just knitting, showing their hands, that would be a great opportunity to do that, to help the hard of hearing follow along. But also, as I said, I sit to the side because I try to show things that doesn't cover my face or my mouth at least. I have mistakenly done it a couple of times. I've noticed when I've watched back, I've put things in front of my face. But instead of holding up, say, a project full screen right in front of my face here where you can't see, me talking, I try to hold it to the side. So at least maybe some of the viewers who may be hard of hearing can still follow along and be able to tell what I'm saying. So try to make that conscious effort to position myself that way during the podcast. And I hope it helps anybody that may have, hard of hearing. It may help them follow along a little bit easier. So that's something I just wanted to mention to James, because he did ask for people's comments and feedback on that topic. So the last thing I wanted to share today was some acquisitions, and I want to thank Lena at the Wee Bit Knitty Podcast, another one that I really enjoy. She's from Norway, and she's so funny. She had mentioned during her podcast that Knit Picks had back in stock some Fleece yarn. Now, over this last year of knitting, I've learned a lot, and I always try to see what people are really talking about to get a good idea of some of the yarns that maybe I could branch out and use. And there's so many wonderful independent yarn dyers out there. I hope to slowly acquire at least one skein from some of my favorites. But I've never ordered from Knit Picks before. But I heard so many podcasters talk about how they were so upset that Knit Picks had discontinued their Fleece line. And when Lena at Wee Bit Knitty mentioned that they were bringing back for just a short time a special reserve, she said on her podcast, go out and get some now. And being the good podcast viewer that I am, I paused her podcast and did just that. So I'll show you what I ended up getting. Now, because these are smaller skeins of yarn, I got 2 of each so that I can make socks out of them, because I don't think one of these will be enough for a pair of socks. But this is the Knit Picks Fleece, and it's called the Special Reserve. This is the teacup colorway, is the first one that I got, and it's a fingering weight. They're all fingering weight of superwash merino, 75%, and 25% nylon. But because they're about 200 yards each, like I say, I got 2 of each. So I got the teacup, and this is called Gummy Bear. And this one I really like, Highland in the greens. Really love that. That's going to make some great, maybe some St. Patrick's Day socks. And of course, I love this Blues of the Glacier colorway. And finally, Baker Street in browns. So I want to thank Lena for letting me know about that, because when I heard that it was discontinued and that so many people love this yarn, I really wanted to try it. And I'm glad that I had the opportunity to pick up a few skeins of that. So I'm looking forward to trying those out on some socks, or maybe something else. So I haven't decided yet if they'll all be socks or if they maybe will be something else. So I think that's all I have to share with you today. I think that's long enough. I want to thank you again for joining me. I hope you enjoyed this episode, and I hope you'll return again to visit me in my Victorian studio. Bye-bye.